New Zealand's response to coronavirus has been hard. They went into level 4 lockdown with elimination of the virus the end goal. It's a more extreme strategy than ours, and we wanted to explore the difference. I spoke with Professor Michael Baker from the University of Otago's Department of Public Health a short time ago. Professor Baker, thank you for your time. In New Zealand, you've gone for an elimination strategy while we've gone for mitigation. Can you explain in layman's terms the practicalities of the differences between those two approaches?
Well, they are very different. I mean, the mitigation approach is what most countries in the Western world were doing when they saw this virus, this pandemic. They treated it like influenza, which is really what's built into our pandemic planning, and that is a virus you can't stop. So basically all you can do is flatten the curve, reduce the impact, and so that's mitigation. But what became very obvious in February was there was an alternative. This virus was more like SARS, which was actually stopped. I mean, the world applied an elimination approach to SARS, and as a result, there were very few, ultimately far fewer cases and not that many fatalities. So we stopped a pandemic. It took a while. So we know this works because this is what has been done in mainland China, and it's also been done in other countries like Taiwan, less than 400 cases, and I think around 10 fatalities. And that's for a population of over 20 million.
So that's what you're looking to do. You're going to have, you hope, an infection-free bubble, if you like, on the island of New Zealand. But then you have to control your borders until we get a vaccine. And given that 17 years after we got SARS, we still don't have a vaccine, that's a pretty high-risk strategy, isn't it?
Well, that is a problem, but Australia's in the same boat. You have actually moved past mitigation. You're actually suppressing it. And actually, you're almost doing better than New Zealand now. In fact, the rates of new cases and fatalities in Australia is very similar to New Zealand. So you're actually close to eliminating this virus as well.
Why are we doing so much better than you are when your lockdown has been so much more strict than ours? I mean, let's talk about the differences between those two.
New Zealand has gone for a very extreme lockdown, and it is working very well. But one of the problems in New Zealand is we started after Australia, in a sense. We were behind you in testing, and we needed to get our infrastructure working better, which we've done now. So we needed that time more, I think, than Australia.
All right, so your lockdown is, I know you have a twin brother who is a GP here in Australia, so you're across our sort of movement restrictions compared to yours. What can we do that you can't do?
In New Zealand, for example, we have no one really going to work in non-essential industries, and I think you have more people in Australia, say, working in construction. And I think you can get a haircut. I think everyone in New Zealand is getting pretty shaggy, and perhaps their hair is not looking quite so good these days because we can't go for a haircut. So it's down to sort of subtle things like that.
All right, so let's talk about it. I mean, you think that we're on path to elimination. We're not saying that we are heading for elimination. We're just trying to stop people getting it, basically, and for our health system to not be overwhelmed. But if we head towards elimination, let's advance this argument about closing our borders sort of indefinitely until there's a vaccine, and the cost potentially to tourism for both of our countries.
Well, I think the international tourism industry, particularly cruising ships, is actually, seriously damaged for the next year, and there's not much we can do about that. So I think that's a bit of a given, but there is the huge benefit of elimination is it's got an exit strategy, and after 2 or 3 months, you can start to resume normal activities. And you look at countries that achieve this, like mainland China, people are starting to go back to work. It's not business as usual, but it's a lot better than the alternative, which is the situation you see across Europe and also North America now, where they're in this suppression mode, where basically they have periods of lockdown which will go on indefinitely, maybe a year or more. So I would much rather be sitting in New Zealand or Australia than in most of Europe and certainly North America.
So domestically, businesses can fire up again and we can go to bars and restaurants and you can go to bars and restaurants. That is, if we get elimination. But we can't go overseas. And given that international tourism is worth something like $11.3 billion to New Zealand, it's worth something like $45 billion to Australia, international airlines can't start flying again. How is that to be managed out of this?
The world is going to be a very difficult place for everyone, regardless of what strategy you take. But the benefit of elimination, if you start early, as Australia and New Zealand appear to be doing, is you avoid a lot of disease and a lot of deaths. And also, you can come out of it, and I think it's much better for the economy, the domestic economy anyway, in both countries, if you're in a state where you don't have to have lockdown going into the future.
And can we never then fly to London again or to New York again until there's a vaccine? And how likely is it that we will get a vaccine, given that they're notoriously difficult with coronaviruses?
Well, there are many other alternatives, and actually very good antivirals, I think, may be more likely. And there will be thousands of scientists working on that at the moment. And if we had good antivirals, we could potentially treat this pneumonia in the same way as we treat a bacterial pneumonia. So it's no longer a life-threatening condition for many people.
Can I ask you this? Do we know yet how immune we are after we have had the virus and how long that immunity lasts? And if we are immune, it's a double-barreled question, can't that immunity be used to save people who are maybe in ICU in desperate straits? Can't the blood or serum from an immune person be used to treat the person who is in terrible condition?
Yeah, I think that seems to be the only treatment that is showing signs of being effective at the moment. But I think there's many promising therapies on the horizon, and I think that is probably more likely than vaccination in the short to medium term.
How short to medium?
Well, it's not my area, but
okay.
Some of the things I read about are incredibly promising.
All right, well, we all wish them luck, and thank you. It's been fascinating to talk to you.
Well, I really hope this is a great Anzac tradition, New Zealand and Australia together, fighting this virus and basically banishing it from our countries.
Let's see how we go. Well, at least we can visit each other if that's the case, even if we can't go anywhere else in the world. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Professor Michael Baker.